Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. My name's Adam, and this is our 100th episode of Saturday Night Special. And this is going to be a special episode for you for our 100th. And I've got a lot of shop stories to tell you and some history and kind of fill you guys in on what you've been asking me. So many people want to know a little bit more about me and my dad and my granddad and the history of the shop. So I think tonight that's what this episode is going to be about. Don't have any machining this particular episode to share with you, but we're going to talk a little bit about the shop, okay? That's what everybody wanted to hear about. So we're going to do a shop tour, and we'll peek into some of the toolboxes again and let you know what's in there, and just a sort of a revised walkthrough of the shop. And it'd probably be a really nice comparison to 2.5 years ago when I first made the first video of Welcome to My Machine Shop. So I've got a lot of pictures to share with you. I've got some that I've got some here that I'll actually hold and show you, and then I've got several that I'm going to put across the screen for you to see. Some that I've scanned, and I've got some pictures from my old shop, and we'll share those. I know I have at least one old cell phone clip that I took from the old shop that has to do with the big Monarch lathe that we used to have. We're going to throw that in there, and I really hope that I'm going to be able to pull all this together for you and just make a nice enjoyable video and give you a little bit more insight about where we come from and how the shop got started and where we are today. Okay, so I'm gonna sit down and get comfortable, and I'll be right back, and we'll get to it. Okay, so the story starts with my granddad, who I've mentioned many times, and we've looked at some of his tools, and we know that he has purchased some of the machines that's in this shop right here. So this is a picture of my granddad right here, and that's a very old picture from whenever he was in the Army. And I believe this is when he was in Italy, somewhere, in the early 40s there. And he did a tour during World War II, and luckily he survived and came home safe. And after the war, he come back here to Pensacola and got a job doing machine work down at Peak's Machine. I don't know exactly when he started working for Peak's Machine, but I know it was sometime around the 40s, late 40s. I believe it was after he come back though, because I remember Dad telling me that he worked there for a long time before he got a job working at the Navy base out there as a machinist. So in 1959, he got a job at NARF, which is the Naval Air Rework Facility, and this is a plaque that they had given him whenever he retired in 1981. Actually, it was October 2nd, 1981 is when he retired. So he was out there for 22 years. And before this, so I don't know how long he worked at Peaks, but it was before this. But he served 22 years out there at NARF, and always heard good stories about my granddad. Over the years growing up in my shop, people that would come in, elderly guys that knew my dad and my granddad, and people just over the years telling me what a nice guy my granddad was. And he was devoted. He was a dedicated person. He was very soft-spoken individual, and he cared about his family and his faith. And he went to church and give back to the church there, and he lived a pretty fulfilling life, I would have to say. I also wanted to share with you a couple more pictures. So this is one right here. I know it's hard to see this, but so this is a picture, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, February 6, 1943. So I guess that's everybody that was in the battery that he was in. I think that's Battery A, 15th Battalion. And it's hard to see it, but this little blue dot right here, that's my granddad right there. Okay, so that's a cool picture of his, and we've been able to hold on to it all this time right there. And I got one more picture here that was given to him whenever he retired. So he worked out at NAS Pensacola, and that is a picture of NAS. And this is the USS Lexington. Used to be stationed out there at NAS Pensacola. And some of these buildings right behind here is where the machine shop was. They had a fabrication shop. I know they had Dad said they had a carpenter shop out there. So there was many shops here that serviced the Lexington and probably other ships that come into the port there also onto the base. And the base looks a lot different than this now. A lot of these buildings are no longer there, but it's definitely recognizable and whenever you go out there today. So that's a pretty cool picture right there, and I enjoy having that. And I do have one picture of my granddad whenever he was actually working there at the base, and it's a pretty cool picture that I scanned it. I'm going to show it to you now. I really like that picture. I've got a copy of it on my wall right here, and he's leaned up against a lathe that I believe it looks like a Monarch lathe. There's a couple features of that lathe that looks much like the Monarch down here. And if you'll notice behind him in that picture, there's also a Hardin's collet chuck and a cabinet that collet chuck is sitting on. And I don't know if it is the same cabinet and the same collet chuck, but I have that collet chuck and cabinet here in this shop. The cabinet's down there, and the collet chuck you see me use on the Victor many times. But I have no way of knowing if that's the exact one in that picture or not, because I'm sure they had many of them. But whenever Granddad worked out there, they apparently they had a lot of surplus that they sold, and Granddad bought a lot of the surplus tools that were for sale, and that's what helped tool up our shop. A lot of the cutting tools and the accessories for the machine, such as a collet chuck and collets, and just all kind of cutting tools he had bought at the surplus auctions and brought them home. So to move forward now on how the shop got started, they built the shop in early 1972, and he actually built the shop for my dad. Okay, Granddad was he was working out at the base, and I believe he was happy there, but he wanted to do something for my dad. My dad at the time was working for Peak's Machine Shop also. Okay, so at the time he would have been 22 years old, my dad, whenever they opened the shop, because my dad was born in 1950, so that was 72, so he was 22 years old. And so Granddad funded the project and built the shop and bought all the machines and filled it up and put my dad to work. And I don't remember the exact year, but my dad ended up buying the shop back from my granddad. And I remember seeing the paper. I don't know what happened to it, but there was a paper there that it was just a very simple note saying how much he was selling the shop for and how much the monthly payments were. And my dad paid my granddad every month a certain payment until it was paid off. That was pretty cool. He didn't charge him interest. It wasn't nothing involved with a bank. It was just every month my dad paid my granddad until it was paid off. And I believe the sum was $25,000 for the shop. And this was back in the late 70s to early 80s, I believe. I believe it was like a 2-year, 24-month payment deal. I don't know for certain now because I lost that paper. I really hate that, but I believe that's what the deal was. So the shop was started in 72, and it was pretty successful. They did a lot of work for many customers all over town here, all around Pensacola and the surrounding areas also. Especially the utilities companies. We did a lot of work for say like ECUA, which is a utilities company here, and other companies around town that had a lot of equipment, construction companies, mechanical companies, and places like the industrial supply houses that would need things machined, fabricated, bored, broached, and then especially a lot of walk-in work. We become known as a true job shop here in town, and we could handle just about any kind of job shop application that you had. A lot of repair and just fabricating, general machining. Okay, so we fast forward to the 90s, and I was in high school, and I graduated in 1997. I was 17 at the time, and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And Dad had been talking to me throughout the year, during my senior year, about coming to work for him and learning to be a machinist. And to be honest with you, at the time, I didn't have a whole lot of interest in it. I didn't really understand a lot about it, okay? I was just too young, and even though I could have been around it, I wasn't around it as much as people think that I was. I was big into riding my dirt bikes and four-wheelers and goofing off and doing what teenagers do. That's what I like to do. And so I started working for Dad when I was 17, and that's kind of when the bug hit me. Once I started working there, I started appreciating everything around there and learning what the machine shop life is all about. Okay. Now, before that, growing up as a kid, I did spend a lot of time in and out of there, especially during the summertime, because he would always have me help him clean the machines up. And I also remember the summertime would be when I would help his brother, Wesley, my Uncle Wesley. Me and him would always load up the truck with all the scrap metal that was out front of the shop and haul it down there to GSI and sell it. And so I got a lot of good memories of that, growing up and remembering the magnets coming around there and hovering over the back of the truck and picking all that scrap metal up and setting it out. So I used to help with that every summer and help him clean the machines. So 97, I started working full time, and I was happy. I was actually happy to get out of high school and actually work and make money and not be in school. I was one of those kind of kids that I didn't want to be in school. I didn't appreciate it at the time, okay? And I should have. Now that I'm grown and I'm out, I really should have paid attention more, especially in math in school. But I enjoyed working and having a full-time job and collecting a paycheck. So things really, I guess it just really took to me well. I started to understand things pretty quick, and my dad and Sonny, we had another guy there, Sonny Wagner, and he was a mentor to me also. Because I worked alongside Sonny quite a bit, as well as Dad. And so whenever Dad wasn't teaching me, Sonny was teaching me things like how to go over there to the pedestal grinder and grind your tool bit, because they didn't use a whole lot of carbide. They did, but they didn't. Okay, so we still used a lot of high-speed tool bits for what we were doing around there. So they taught me how to grind those chip breakers and how to grind all the relief angles that you needed on tool bits. Same thing with the brazed on carbide tools, and then into the actual jobs themselves, all the work that we did and the different types of jobs. Whenever I first started, I didn't really understand what all those parts were, but the more I worked with them and the more that I would be told, well, that's a pump, that's a motor, this spins, this pumps water, or whatever. It doesn't have to be that. It was just the jobs that come in. That experience working on them in the shop is how I gained my knowledge in this trade. Okay, I've had a lot of people ask me, how did you learn how to do this work? Well, that's how I learned how to do this work. I actually worked in the shop with my hands and being taught by a couple mentors, including my granddad, and that's how I know what I know today about the work. And I also wanted to point out there, this is something that's kind of been on my mind for a long time, is that I show this stuff on video because it is fun for me and it's enjoyable, but never do I ever want anybody to think that that I'm just an average person. Okay, I'm an average machinist. That's what I consider myself, as an average machinist, and I'm very humbled by all of this YouTube, that all the videos and all of the feedback that I'm getting, and the viewers and all of the comments that I get. But for I would say for one of me, there's probably 20 guys out there that know a whole lot more than me, regarding this trade. Okay, I was never in college. I didn't go to school to learn it. I learned it in the shop. Okay, so there's a lot of subjects there where I could have probably. It would have been nice to go to school and learn a little more technical book work than just hands-on. But I am very happy with how all this turned out. Okay, and the work that you see me do is the experience that I've gained in my shop, how to set jobs up and how to machine them, what kind of tools to use, whether it be a carbide insert or a high-speed tool bit. Okay, the proper speeds to run the lathe at whenever you're cutting something. All right, I just was put around that, and I had to figure it out. My dad would show me how to do things, but I had to figure a lot of it out on my own. He would come out there and coach me and tell me what I needed to do, and sometimes show me things. And so I had to do that every day. And the more that I do it, the more that I did it then, the more I understood it. Okay, and it just started making sense to me. It started clicking. So that is how I got my machining knowledge. All right. Now, I did go to PJC, which is a junior college here in town, and I took some welding courses out there, and that was in the late 90s. That was around 98, 99. I did it for 2 years, and I took beginners welding, advanced welding, which is stick welding. Okay, but they also taught us how to use the oxy fuel for the torch, how to weld with a torch. They also taught us how to braze, and then I also took TIG welding and MIG welding. Now, I could have went through the whole program and gone all the way through to pipe welding and got certified, but I didn't feel that I needed to do that at the time, because the type of welding that we do in my shop was just general, building, construction, and build-up work on like shafts and welding parts together. So I wasn't worried about pipe welding at the time. So I can honestly say, when it comes to pipe welding and vertical welding and things like that, I'm not quite up to par. I kind of like mine in a flat position as many times as I can get it. But I did do a little bit of schooling for welding, and I had a great time. I would suggest anybody that gets the opportunity to go to a local tech school for welding, go and do it, because it's educational and it's fun at the same time. You get to go weld and build things. So I really enjoyed it, and I got a lot of good memories with the guys that I was in those classes with out there, my instructors. It was fun. So kind of moving forward here, I know this is getting a little bit long-winded, but so moving forward all the way into let's say 2009. Okay, 2009 is when I took a job working where I am now. So I've been there for 6 years last month, and during the time whenever I was approached about that, we were really kind of struggling there at the shop. The economy hurt us too, and we weren't really getting as much work as we were. And they offered me a position as a machinist there at their shop with great benefits and good pay, things like that Dad couldn't afford to pay me, so I, like my health insurance, I had to cover that on my own. So it was some good benefits and good pay. So we talked about it, and we took the job, and I decided that I was going to work that job full time, and I was going to come home and take care of our shop also. And that's what I did for a couple years. I come home and work real late and get our jobs done down at our shop. And after a couple years, things started changing, and Dad was ready to retire and get out of it completely. So that's when we started talking about downsizing and selling some of the machines and move the shop down here. And you know, fortunately, I've got this building here, which works as a good machine shop for me. So that's what we started doing. You know, kind of eventually, I had just closed the doors and told some of the few customers that I had left that was still coming that we were going to go ahead and close, and I was going to reset the shop down here, and I'd let them know when I was ready. That's what we did. So we sold off some of the machines, and one of those machines is the Big Monarch. So I've got a few pictures here about the Big Monarch that I was going to share with you. You guys might like that. It's some of the bigger stuff that we used to work on, some of those pump housings, and there was one of those big pipe valves that I had to do all the time. So I was going to throw those in the video and let you see some of those pictures. And I really hated to see that lathe go. I tried to get my employers down there to buy that lathe, but they had already agreed to buy the boring mill and the Acra lathe and the Acra mill and the electric press. Okay, so they had agreed to buy all those, which was awesome. And they didn't quite want to buy the big lathe because they already invested in those. So we ended up just selling the big lathe to somebody else, and it's still here local, but I haven't seen it since we sold it. But that was an awesome lathe, and we did some cool work with that machine, and I really just hated to see it go. But I got a video whenever they were picking it up and setting it over onto the truck, so we'll cut and we'll show you that real quick, okay? Yeah, it's just behind the truck there.
What we should have done was run that shelf block back up before we took the
So that was the big lathe, the big Monarch, and I do miss it. If you were paying attention, you'd see that big chuck that was on that thing. That was a 24-inch Cushman chuck that was solid as a rock, and it would hold anything that you put in there, and you could torque down on it as tight as you wanted to, and it would hold. So all you guys that have commented in some of my videos about, you know, the parts that I'm holding down here in the Monarch and the pacemaker at work, you know, that they're a little worried. I know some things seem a little sketchy at times, but I wouldn't do it if I was worried that it wouldn't hold. So I try not to go out of my boundaries, but you gotta have confidence in what you're doing there. You can't be scared of it. So I'm always confident in what I'm doing, that it's gonna work, okay? But so that was the big lathe there, and had a few other pictures there of us working in the shop that I was throwing in the video. Unfortunately, I don't have very many pictures of Dad. Like, I don't have any of Dad working, but I've got, you know, a couple pictures of he and I, and same with Granddad. I don't have any pictures of him in the shop working other than the ones I already showed you there, where he was out there at NARF. So that's kind of the story of our shop there. And once we set it up down here, which was 2.5 years ago, is when I finally got everything hooked up and running. And well, actually, it's been about 3 years now. It was about 6 months before I started really putting YouTube videos up on the channel. I had an idea. Before that, I was actually posting pictures on the Practical Machinist forum, and a lot of people actually know me from there, and they were following my posts about every day. I was putting pictures up. Everybody seemed to really enjoy that, and I was just blown away, like how many people were watching my thread of the pictures that I was putting up there, and everybody just seemed to love it. You know, the work that we was doing. That's what it was all about, was the work, the job shop work and the repairs. So I had an idea to get a camera, a GoPro actually, and start doing some videos of some of the work that I was doing and showing some of the jobs. And so that's what we did. We bought a GoPro, and I held on to that GoPro for probably about 6 months before I ever started using it. And I'm glad that I did, because it's really taken off, and I'm really enjoying it. So, you know, I made a couple videos there at the beginning, a music video, which was something that I wanted to do, but because of the copyright issues, I wasn't ever able to make the music videos the way I wanted to. I'd have to use some of the free stuff, but I made that, and then I made a introduction to the shop there. So you definitely should check that out, and you kind of compare then and now. But after that, we just started jumping right into the project videos, the roller projects and the well drilling shaft, and everything just kind of grown organically with this channel, guys. Started getting a lot of subscribers and followers, and everybody was commenting on the work and encouraging me on what was going on here. So I just kept it going, and I started meeting a lot of other YouTube creators, you know, through our videos, and become friends with people all over the world, man. It was just unbelievable. And that's what I tell people. I was like, man, I got friends on every continent of this country, or this planet. As I got friends everywhere, and it's just amazing. And I really enjoy hearing from everybody and getting the feedback. But on top of that, I really do enjoy the video making. I do like it. Taking a job and filming it and showing you what we do, and I understand that a lot of that is the educational things that people enjoy. So that's another reason I like it, is because I am helping other guys who are trying to learn how to do this trade, and I'm trying to show you the not necessarily the proper way to do things, the way that I do it. That's something else that I wanted to stress with you guys, is that I'm not the best, and I'm not going to say that this is the only way to do it. I'm going to show you my way to do it, and that's the difference there, okay? It's just the way that I decide, it's the path that I decide to take there. Same thing with that welding table right there. You know, I had a lot of people from all over the world telling me what I'm doing wrong and how I should build that. And I appreciated people's opinions on that, but I wanted to build it the way I did. Whether it was the right way or the wrong way, I did it how I wanted to. And that's the enjoyment of having your own shop and your own machines and your tools, and getting to build things the way you want to, okay? So here we are now, just about 2016, and I'm looking forward to keeping this adventure rolling. All right, we're going to keep the videos coming. I've got some things planned. Of course, I've already told you about the hydraulic cylinder. That is going to be a future project, and hopefully pretty soon I'm going to start on the arm for the K&T mill that holds the vertical head. I'm actually going to be getting a actual solid piece, a sample to follow, and I'm getting that from Bill Ashcraft over there at 5 Star Machine up in Arkansas. He just bought the same K&T that I got, and his come with that arm. So him and Dana, they're gonna box it up and they're gonna send it to me, and I'll actually have a sample here that I can copy. So I'm looking forward to that upcoming video project, and I film whatever comes along the way, okay? Whatever jobs come in the shop. There's not a lot of jobs that come in here anymore, not like it was in the beginning, because I just was, with my current workload down there, I had to kind of back off on some of that, okay? So whatever projects come in the shop is what we show, and sometimes along the way I have to kind of think of something that we can continue putting on the channel. And we still have a lot of things around here that we can make some videos out of, okay? So we'll keep them coming. All right, so I think that's about it for the shop history there, and I really hope you guys enjoyed that. You know, the pictures here of my dad and my granddad and me down in the shop. So we've got what else I got for you? I've got a really cool shop story, something that my dad was involved with way back in the day and back in the 70s, a project. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to do a shop tour. We'll do a little walk around to show everybody, catch everybody up to speed on the machines and how the shop is laid out, and we'll take a peek in some of the toolboxes and look at some of the tools. And I hope you guys have really enjoyed this, and I look forward to many more YouTube moments with you guys, okay? All right. So one of the questions that was brought up when I asked you guys what would you like to hear me talk about, and one of the questions was, what was my biggest blunder during my machining career? What was my biggest mess up? You know, a part that I might have scrapped or just totally screwed up, you know? So luckily there hasn't been a lot of really bad ones over the years. I have had my share of mess ups, because that's just normal. That's what we all do. We mess up and we learn from those mistakes, right? I've got one that really stands out in my mind that I really messed up pretty bad and ended up costing some money. I do have some other ones that I remember messing up, such as there was a pretty good size electric motor shaft that I was making one time, and I ended up cutting I'm trying to remember, yeah, it was the bearing journal. I cut the bearing journal too small, and me, you know, I was kind of worried to tell Dad, and you know, because I knew it was like there's a whole piece of material that we got to eat, we got to start all over, and I was wanting to try to like fix it somehow. And Dad always taught me during those times like that he said the customer isn't paying for a repair, they're paying us for a new shaft. So whenever we did that, we make a new shaft. We didn't try to repair it. And that's always stuck with me, is you mess the shaft up, you get a new piece of material, and you start over. So there was a couple shafts like that I messed up. I remember a pump shaft one time. I did the same thing. I actually, there was a pump shaft that I went in there, and it actually had undercuts machined into the journals for set screws. And I had put 2 of the undercuts in the wrong spot. And where they were located, it just would not work, because it was actually in a seal area. So that was one that I had to scrap and start all over again. But the one big one that sticks in my mind the most was a prop shaft that I was making. We used to make quite a few prop shafts. This would be the end of a prop shaft. That's a standard end. You know, you've got your thread, you got a little stub here, a thread, and then you have your taper. And then, you know, the rest of it's a shaft. Sometimes a prop shaft is doubled. You have a double taper, you know, a taper on each end. Most of them, though, just have a taper on one end, and the other end has a coupling end, sometimes with divots for your set screws or scallops for pins to go through. But The particular prop shaft that I'm talking about, I messed up on, and it wasn't this size though. Okay, this one wouldn't been too bad. The one that I messed up was one that was this size right here, and I believe that's 2.5. I believe it was a 2.5 inch. This one's a 3. Okay, so this is a little bit bigger than the one that I messed up, but I remember it was a 2.5 inch prop shaft, brand new piece of material, and I had cut it to length, which that was a mess up right there. My dad had always taught me, because usually whenever you buy a prop shaft material, it comes in standard feet. Okay, so you might need, say, 8 feet. Well, they're going to sell you 10, or something like that. So the best thing to do is, whenever you got to build a prop shaft, is that you leave it a little long, don't cut it yet, and you go ahead and you machine the end of it here. You machine the threads and your taper. That way you've got one chance there, at least one chance, to correct yourself if you mess up. Say you really screw that taper up and it doesn't cut it right, or you screw a thread up. You can go to the saw and you can cut that end off, and you can start over again. Well, I had messed up, and I went in there and I cut it the exact length that it needed, plus 1/8 of an inch or so for facing, and so that was messed up right there. I shouldn't have done that. But the biggest mistake that I made was that I come in and I started cutting the threads, and I don't recall what the thread pitch is. I have to look at my chart. It was a very coarse pitch. Maybe it was 4.5 threads per inch. But anyway, throughout my videos, anytime I'm cutting a thread, I'll always show you checking the thread pitch with a thread pitch gauge after you make a scratch pass, right? Well, there's a reason why. Is because even though you think you have the machine set in the right position, you may be off 1 notch. And that's what happened when I was cutting that thread. I had the dial, I don't remember which number it was on, because it goes 1 through 9, I believe, or 1 through 10, and I was 1 number off. Even though I was looking at it and I thought it was in line, I was 1 number off. But the mistake I made was I didn't take my thread pitch gauge and go in there and check it after I made my scratch pass. I just went in there and I started cutting it, and got it on down, and I had the nuts, and I kept checking it with the nuts, and I couldn't get those suckers to go on there. It was just really screwing with me, and so I kept cutting it, shaving it, and spring passes. I couldn't get it to go. I finally checked it with my pitch gauge, and I think my heart sank, and realized that I was like a 1/2 pitch off, man. It was the wrong thread pitch. So what to do? You're trying to save this piece of material that probably costs at least $1,000 or $1,500. I don't remember what it was. This was quite a long time ago. But so what we ended up doing to try to save that was, I took a big piece of stainless steel and I ended up making 2 nuts for the threads that I had cut. And that was very labor extensive to do that, boring it and threading it, and then going over to the mill and machining the hex on there, and then cutting them off and facing it. I spent a ton of labor doing that to fix my mistake. But that job just really haunted me, and it haunted me bad, and I don't know what had happened, but the taper, the shaft ended up coming back, even with the new nuts that I had on there. But the shaft had come back because the prop wasn't fitting right. And we actually had a prop there that we had. That phone just won't stop, man. We actually had a prop there that we fitted that should have been the correct size. 3/4 to the foot is the taper. That's a standard prop taper, and we had it fit. But for some reason, that prop that he was using, the taper was off on it, and it did not fit the shaft. So it just caused all kind of problems, man. So they ended up buying a brand new prop and doing away with that old one. They ordered a brand new prop, and because it was messed up, my dad bought a brand new piece of material, and we made a whole new shaft for him, to make that customer happy, to do right where we did wrong. And that costs a lot of money, but that's what you got to do in instances like that. You know, you mess up. That's why you don't want to mess up, so that you're not losing money. That you want to make money at this. But that was definitely a learning experience there. But in the end, we ended up making a new shaft, and everything worked out perfect. We had the new set of nuts there that were supposed to fit the shaft to begin with. We had a brand new prop that we fit it with, and we had a shaft that actually worked the second time around. So the lesson here is to always use your thread pitch gauge and always double check it whenever you go, before you start cutting heavy on your threads. You make a very light cut across there, and you always check it with your pitch. And that way you can see if you're off, and you can always, that little scratch pass across there isn't going to hurt anything if it's wrong. You know, you correct yourself, and then you go in there and you start cutting your threads. So that is probably one of my biggest blunders in my career. Definitely worth mentioning there, and definitely worth you guys remembering to always use your thread pitch gauge. Okay, so all right, I hope you enjoyed that story.